tea lovers, settle in because we've got a story. I'm Nell.
And I'm Rose. And today we're bringing you the tea.
Across eras. Hey y'all, what's happening?
Hey, how's the week?
It's really great. I've been sleeping because I graduated.
Hail the conquering graduate.
Thank you. I didn't go to, the big ceremony. I did go out to lunch at the Frontier.
That's the real celebration. If you're from around here, you're anywhere close to UNM for any kind of achievement. Yeah, Frontier after.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been sleeping a lot. And also, this is kind of embarrassing. I've been obsessively looking at TMZ on my phone all the past 2 weeks. I do have time. But the reason is because the artist formerly known as Puff Daddy is on trial.
I've skipped most of that.
Are you avoiding it for your mental health? We don't have to talk about it.
Not in any way. There are so many weird, stupid things going on in great detail at the moment that I don't think you can pay attention to all of them. And that one just hadn't been on my radar. I wasn't really very aware of the situation beforehand. So It's interesting. I don't come from a knowledgeable place.
So for our audience, what I'm going to talk about that's been going on in the trial is quite a lot. And if it's, triggering for you, just skip ahead a few minutes. We will totally understand. All right. So I remember, I think I was in 10th or 11th grade when Tupac died, I think.
I was in, I believe, 8th grade.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I don't remember how many graduation years are between us.
I think 3 or 4.
So I remember maybe I was in 9th or 10th grade when Tupac died. I don't remember. When Notorious B.I.G. died, I remember a weird comment from Suge Knight, who was the founder of Death Row Records. I don't even know if he was the founder. He was associated with Death Row Records. Mm-hmm. And, there at that time, there was a whole West Coast, East Coast thing going on. Death Row Records had Snoop Dogg and Ice Cube and all of them, all West Coast. And then we have Notorious B.I.G. out here on Bad Boy Records. And Puff Daddy was I don't know what he was, the producer, the Scooter Braun to the Justin Bieber. I don't know. But I just remember Suge Knight was made this off the cuff comment about, hey, at least I'm not a weird producer who's going to make you let me be in all your music videos. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And then, everybody liked the Puff Daddy song with Faith Evans, the tribute to Notorious B.I.G. And, I can't even tell you off the top of my head at the moment what Puff Daddy sings.
I don't feel like
he
any
makes
of
music anymore.
I don't feel like any of his clout is based on his own music for the most part. Yeah, that's a general sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like I said, not a knowledgeable place.
It wasn't my type of rap music back then. But anywho, so you think of Diddy right now and you're there's alleged baby oil and alleged freak-offs and allegedly a lot of people in Hollywood used to go to these things. More and more news clips are popping up of celebrities who in the past were oh, I love partying with Diddy.
It's the biggest party. It's the you've arrived if you got invited to be a VIP at this event. And,
right?
A lot of people are not going to rock the boat enough to stop getting invited to the parties, even if you see some really crazy shit going down.
But anyways, his ex-girlfriend Cassie took the stand a few days ago. And I don't know anything Cassie sings. She's very beautiful. That's all I know. But holy bananas. The stuff that's come out is disgusting and disturbing. And then there's people out there who are if it was that bad, why didn't she leave?
No, she's clearly the villain because she's talking about it.
Right. The most popular internet comment I saw about that was, it's so hard to even tell your nail tech when you don't like the color of your nails. How are you supposed to tell billionaire Puff Daddy that you don't want to be in his freak-offs anymore because they're dehumanizing?
Even if you weren't getting anything of high value out of that situation, approval is a hell of a drug.
I know. Cassie said at one point they would have freak-offs weekly, and they would last for sometimes 2 days. She was getting constant UTIs and sores in her mouth.
Oh, that's so uncomfortable.
And antibiotics weren't working on her anymore. And Diddy's kids were like all in court up until Cassie testified. Like, I don't know if they were asked not to come, told not to come, didn't want to hear it, had an idea of what was going to be said. There was a prison phone call that was just released of Diddy talking to one of his older kids, telling them, remove the pizza boxes or something like that. The kid was like kind of grasping it. Yeah, very in code.
Remove the pizza boxes. That's your safe word for cops coming over.
Right? So, yeah, I guess the trial's supposed to go on for like 6 more weeks, or maybe it's scheduled for 6 weeks. I don't know.
It's going to be super long.
Right? And I already know what my uninformed and non-legal opinion is, but it is going to be interesting to see what the outcome is. And because I'm a nosy woman, who gets subpoenaed? There were already 2 people who testified who were like, I would not have been here, but you subpoenaed me.
You have forced my hand.
There's rumors about all kinds of celebrities being subpoenaed.
And I think in any other environment, this would be just the only thing on the news. It's like we're kind of in a weird saturation period right now where everything's a crisis. So anything interesting, you really have to have started out being interested in it, I think, because it's not obvious.
Yeah.
What's front and center. There's nothing that's just front and center right now.
No, I mean, if you live in the U.S., you've got like the president calling Taylor Swift not hot anymore. Sir, that is creepy. And this is when we say, okay, R. Kelly. Don't do that. You're old. And we've also got Taylor Swift releasing Look What You Made Me Do, Taylor's version, which is off the album Reputation, which does not have a Taylor's version yet. And she allowed it to be put in this episode in the last season of Handmaid's Tale. And it's very, very relevant and a power move on her behalf.
I have never been able to get caught up on Handmaid's Tale. I
think I quit around season 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, it's a similar spot. I think we talked about this before. It's so too real to be entertainment. I had this one marathon night where I had the house to myself and I didn't have anything to do the next day, and I watched several seasons while painting, and that's probably one of the weirdest paintings that I have.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see this painting.
And you've seen it before. Yeah, it's the one most people comment on and go, oh wow, I love the color saturation there, but it's really just what Screaming looks like to me. I'll have to put a picture up now.
I mean,
that was my only foray into Handmaid's Tale. I mean, I've read the book. But.
And the fact that Handmaid's Tale is in its final season right now is also very relevant to how it just feels a little bit. We also, in the US, we've got, like, besides, like, all the non-stop political stuff, we've also got, in Boston, this lady named Karen Reed is being retried. She's being accused of killing her, like, cop boyfriend. I'm not alleging, but what I've heard is that allegedly it was his cop buddies, and they're trying to frame her.
Not even a thing that I had on my radar.
And my personal opinion on this is that if the cop buddies didn't do anything wrong, they have gone wildly out of their way to make themselves look incredibly suspicious.
Like, if that's just you acting normal, sir, I have to inform you, you're not normal.
Right. Okay, so anyways, that is my long thing because I needed to mention the Diddy trial because it's just so gross.
It's relevant actually to what I want to talk about today too, because it's all wrapped up in reputation. Like, I think he is where he is now because he crafted a certain reputation and was willing to do anything to keep it. I think that that's super normal for humans in general. Like I was saying before, approval is a hell of a drug, and you want other people to perceive you well, and what you're willing to do to get that perception marks the way you're going to leave your mark on the world.
Yep. True, for good or bad.
And of course I have a Tudor example because,
Who are we talking about? Who's going around singing, Look What You Made Me Do?
So today we're talking about Jane Viscountess Rochford, otherwise known as Jane Boleyn.
Oh.
And she's not a character that if you say the name Jane Boleyn, most people will just be like, who? Because there's a lot of ancillary characters in the story. She's super interesting because She's a character that, while not a main cast part of the Anne Boleyn Henry VIII story, she's a character that you can never leave out.
And her first name, the one with Viscountess, is so much more fancy.
Viscountess Rochford. So Rochford was the title that was given to George Boleyn in order to be able to add him to the Privy Council.
Oh.
So when the Boleyns were flying high and Henry VIII wanted them in his inner circle, if you want them at specific meetings, you have to give them a title.
How very things of it all.
How very reputation filled. So she's a character you can't ever leave out, because even though her touch on the situation feels kind of minor, she was integral to several trials and ultimately lost her life because of it. So I want to talk a little bit about her life. Most of this is based on the Julia Fox biography, Jane Boleyn, The True Story of the Infamous Lady Rochford.
You guys, oh my gosh. Okay, I have to tell you something really quick. A couple days ago, Rose told me that she was reading the Julia Fox biography, and I was like, that's so wild. I did not know that was on Rose's reading list. I don't know what that has to do with like old-timey England, but holy bananas. Rose, please Google Julia Fox book.
Oh.
That's the first person the artist formerly known as Kanye West publicly dated after him and Kim split up. And she's quite entertaining. And I thought that's what you were reading. You guys. You
might be reading that. You don't know. That's amazing. Okay. I'm sorry to be disappointing.
No, I'm not disappointed. I'm not.
Julia Fox wrote a really excellent biography of Jane Boleyn that I think she researched more in depth the singular life of Jane Boleyn, I think more than had been done previously anywhere to my knowledge.
Nice.
But she also approached it from a stance of not assuming that she wasn't a sympathetic character.
Okay.
Which is almost unheard of, and it wasn't even something I had really clocked, but there are so many Tudor like media properties now. I mean, the Tudors, Blood, Sex, and Royalty, which we're going to talk about in a second, Wolf Hall, the Firebrand, none of these movies skip the Jane Rochford character, and she's always this dour little mouse, sour face, sucking on a lemon. I just hate court. I hate the Boleyns. She's never a happy character. She's never even a contented character. She was a Boleyn. But according to most established historic sources, she was instrumental in the downfall of the Boleyns.
Oh.
So backing it up a little bit, Jane Boleyn was born Jane Parker in 1505 in Norfolk, England. The Norfolks were very instrumental in the Boleyn rise in the court. She married George Boleyn in 1524, but before that, she served in the households of 5 of Henry's 6 wives.
Whoa.
She probably would have done all 6 had, the things not happened.
Okay.
So she first entered the court at 14 years old. And can you imagine stepping into that massive amount of controlled chaos as a 14-year-old?
Nope.
You're by yourself. Your parents are not there. You probably have family members, but you're entering the household of the queen. Everybody unequivocally agrees that this is a good idea for your life, no matter how you feel about it. This is how you're going to catch a husband. This is how your family's going to catch a life.
Yep. Whoa, that's rough.
Right. But so she's in Catherine of Aragon's household, and she's listed on the rolls of going to the Field of Cloth of Gold. The Field of Cloth of Gold was basically the 16th century Met Gala.
Ooh.
Every young, hot, rich thing that was anyone was at this meeting. A little bit outside of Calais in 1520. And it was a meeting between Henry VIII and Francis I of France. And it was supposed to be a peace summit that would establish everlasting peace between their realms in perpetuity. They always everlasting in perpetuity. We are abolishing war. And, that's obviously that's a little bit optimistic, and it never sticks. But it was a huge summit, and it was 2 relatively young kings with very rich courts that were trying to impress each other. and they pulled out all the stops. There were stories of like a 2-story wine fountain that was running the entire. You just go and put your cup underneath. There was an entire palace called the Palace of Illusions created out of scaffolding and tarps. They built an entire aesthetic in the middle of nowhere just to compete with each other at this peace summit.
I mean, yeah. Like the camps at Burning Man.
Yes, exactly. They were glamping 16th century style. Exactly. Young virile king meets young virile king, both surrounded by the tip-top tier of their respective societies. Anybody wants to be at this thing. And 14-year-old Jane Boleyn, well, at this point, Jane Parker, gets to witness this. And so she just extremely early on understood, or at least got to observe, the nuances of politics mixed with reputation, mixed with bloodlines. It's a hot mess, and it's not like she can decide she'd like to pick a different career and leave. This is her world.
That is true.
She's just there to learn about it. So she was actually also cast in a lead role in the Chateau Vert masquerade at the English court in 1522.
Ooh.
And that, if you've seen The Tudors, the scene where Anne Boleyn meets Henry VIII, where they're all in the white costumes, that actually was this performance. You know, I don't think they were probably wearing the tank top rough dresses,
right,
you know,
right.
but you know, it was all the ladies' virtues being held captive by all of the ladies' vices, and then, you know, the men of the court go and save them. Like, that was an actual masquerade, and Jane Boleyn was part of it.
Wow.
And that's considered Anne Boleyn's entry into the court after her being raised at the French court. Anne was educated in France, and when she returned and was reintroduced to the court is when Henry became aware of her, and that's when the whole thing kicked off.
Okay.
But because she was educated in France, that's why she was a big reformist in terms of religion. She was absolutely in the same spheres as Marguerite de Navarre, who was a poet, a religious reformer, a patron, gave her access to a huge range of pretty radical ideas.
Okay.
And so like her being that passionate about these political and religious ideals later on the road makes absolute sense. What I loved in Blood, Sex, and Royalty, which I know I said before, so that's a Netflix special about Anne Boleyn. I don't think docudrama is a new thing, but I like the taking the production quality seriously trend that I've seen recently. And of course, they took a lot of liberties, but the fact that they had, you know, historians that I respected right in there shoring up the story and saying, oh, that's great, this might actually be how it actually went.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's such an awesome combination of popular history and, you know, established academia. And so in the beginning, they showed Anne Boleyn reading in a window and then being, you know, dragged off to play by her sister. And they're in the company of Marguerite de Navarre. And the book that she sets down is one that we've talked about, which is the Book of the City of Ladies by Christine de Pizan.
Oh, okay.
I highly recommend the episode. We had fun with it. But the short version is it is a treatise on how women's roles in society are perceived versus how they would like to be perceived and how it's actually lived. And it was a direct response to the Roman de la Rose.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Timeline-wise, she absolutely could have and probably did have a copy of that book.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was neat. I mean, all of the little liberties that they're taking, I'm just like, medieval Easter egg. They're so rare. So back to Jane. So she's in this glittering world. She's looking for a husband first and foremost, but she's also trying to establish herself in a way that will allow her to keep all of the amazing accoutrements that this world provides. And in that way, it's a little bit different. Your reputation in that time is going to get you the difference between poverty and starvation and silks and roast peacock.
Yep, that's true.
Nowadays, there is a happy medium. It's not, you know, rags or riches.
Yeah. Diddy has silk robes and whatnot.
Right.
His reputation, not so good right now.
And look at what it took to stay in that orbit. Mm-hmm. So a marriage is arranged between herself and George Boleyn.
Okay.
So she enters the sphere in a much more private way. This is still when Catherine of Aragon is queen, you know, and so it's really dicey to, you know, have pledged for another side, even if, you know, under the guise of a completely respectable marriage. Like, it's still throwing your hat in on one side or the other, and she isn't necessarily even trying to make that case. And, you know, this is where she enters in every single Tudor story and movie, where She's at best a little mousy and scared of the situation, and at worst actively judging everyone from the word go. Every single portrayal. And her life, because they have to show her as the villain for really solid reasons that we're going to go into in a second, but they always establish her quite quickly as not somebody that you're supposed to like. So fast forward, we're not going to tell the entire story because we have before and we will again, but this one is about Jane. So fast forward to Anne Boleyn's treason trial. In short version, she's been accused of adultery and of incestuous adultery. So she was accused of having slept with Mark Smeaton, her private musician, her poet, Sir Thomas Wyatt. So she was accused of having slept with just a ton of people. They had to make her look really awful because Henry VIII had made such a crazy case for why he needed her that there had to be an equally crazy case to get rid of her. So she's accused of witchcraft. She's accused of screwing every guy that crossed her threshold. She was also accused of having slept with her brother. Because they were always observed to be very close, and he had been made a member of the Privy Council and given all of these honors. You kind of have to get rid of him as well. It's really kind of surprising that their dad didn't go. The fact that he wasn't arrested in any of this or implicated, that surprises me.
He's like walking around wearing a t-shirt that said, I hate my kids, or
pretty
what?
Much. Yeah, right. Yeah, so she's accused of sleeping with her brother, and so they bring Jane Rochford in to grill her about her husband. You know, she's intimately connected with the Boleyns. She is in on all of these conversations. She's still a lady in waiting, so she's still one of those background characters that nobody seems to remember has ears.
And they don't remember that, no.
So she testifies that she has been told, either by Anne or George, it's a little bit disputed, that the king is incapable of siring an heir. And that's treasonous talk, even if it's true. You're not allowed to actually complain about the dick of an emperor. It's here that she gets a very opinion-based reputation.
Okay.
So later on, George Boleyn is quoted as having said, how can I have been brought so low by the words of one woman? And that's always assumed to have referred to his wife. I mean, that's ambiguous.
Yeah, dang, Jane.
I know, right? She just throws him under the bus. And you know, that's where that foreshadowing comes in with every portrayal. Like, oh man, she's always been a bitch, and she just like had the opportunity to get rid of them. Fantastic. Some of them, you know, show George as an abusive partner to her, and so she's happy to get rid of him that way. But for whatever reason, everybody's really down. And you're like, yeah, Jane totally offed her husband. And Julia Fox talks about it. She's being interrogated by Cromwell. It is already, it's been a fraught political situation basically her entire adult life. And this is just the newest iteration of it. This is, you know, they've been making people sign the Act of Succession, which you swear an oath that Anne Boleyn is the undisputed queen and Henry VIII is the undisputed head of the church. And if you don't sign it, you're a heretic.
Wow.
We darn near lost Mary I because of that, because she wouldn't sign it. Why we lost Sir Thomas More.
Wow.
Yeah, because he wouldn't sign the Act of Succession. And so all of this culminates in the person that's been ordering all of these Act of Succession executions and many other things beside. He's Henry's right arm, and he's really invested in success because he's watched two successive chancellors get ousted and die because of not succeeding. So this person's sitting in front of her, grilling her, interrogating her in the Tower of London, where you're not necessarily being tortured, but the instruments are available.
Yes, I saw them.
And she's desperate to tell him anything that will get her out of that room.
Girl, we know all about false confessions. They happen all the time.
Even if it wasn't a false confession, just, you know, I think I heard this one time that she wasn't having a great time in bed. And then that's all they need.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so that testimony is brought to George Boleyn when he's testifying publicly in court, and he is told unequivocally, do not read it out loud. And he does anyway.
Dang,
thus
guys.
sealing his own fate. It is not necessarily at that point about whether or not you screwed your sister. You just screwed your monarch, and he's not having it.
Imagine if, like, your whole world was rocked on the temper tantrums of one king.
So, everybody on trial dies.
Yeah.
It's a preconceived outcome. The courts are just part of the show. They're not actually any kind of deciding factor.
Harry Potter, book number 5.
Mm-hmm. So Anne Boleyn is executed. George Boleyn is executed. All the lovers supposedly are executed. Mark Smeaton gets a hell of a deal and loses his eye first. Can you not just behead a guy? Or I feel bad for him.
Do they like accidentally poke it out or what?
No. They tortured a confession out of him. Lost an eye in the process. And it's just, you were going to kill him anyway. Terrible. I think I just sympathize because he's the musician. And afterward, Jane Boleyn is brought back into the household of Jane Seymour.
Okay.
So that's really surprising. That's kind of point 2 that goes against her all the time, is that she manages to claw her way back into court. She's a scheming, avaricious lady that is...
Where was she supposed to go?
Right, where is she supposed to go? She doesn't belong to the Parker family anymore. Those are not her people. She was subsumed into the Boleyns and then Rochfords, and she's kind of her own agent now. In a way, it's more freedom than she ever would have had available, but in a lot of other ways, it's terrible. She can't make her own money. She still owes taxes.
Prison is still a prison.
And if your family is offed for traitorism, by default, all of their goods go back to the crown.
Yeah.
That's also, an incentive for kings to get rid of court members. That's why it's so contentious, because the crown can take it back. And that's also, side note, why you don't talk shit at your own execution. That's why every single person stands up on the block and goes, "God save the king. I was terrible to him." Because the only reason your family's going to survive afterward is if the king goes, yeah, I guess I'm feeling generous. You can have the spoons back. Yeah, she's stuck with her literal ass in the wind. And so when Jane Seymour comes up and needs experienced ladies in waiting, she's actually an ideal candidate. She's served 2 queens.
That makes sense.
And she's very, very, very beholden to the court for not killing her with the rest of the family.
Yep.
So she serves in Jane Seymour's court. We're going to skip through a little bit because the other bookend is what seals her fate. So she's in the court of Jane Seymour. She's in the court of Anne of Cleves. She's actually the one that testified, another trial, at the annulment hearings for Anne of Cleves' marriage, that when asked if she and Henry had slept together, Anne replied, "Why, yes, we sleep next to each other every night, and he kisses me every morning."
That's right.
Yeah, because no one ever teaches a royal lady about sex, and then after the wedding, you're supposed to be some sort of expert, or it's your fault. So, so that gets added to Jane Boleyn's shit list because she absolutely had to go tell tales again against another queen. Oh my gosh. And just, at that point, no, I've seen how badly lying to this court goes. Yeah, absolutely. This is what was said. Yep. I'm just not even dealing with that. You would think that would be her approach just forever. I mean, she's seeing people get kicked out of the court left and right. It's worked. So in comes Catherine Howard.
Okay.
So Catherine Howard she's also her own polarizing figure, and that's a story for a different day, but she's a teenager. She's Henry VIII's Candyland. He's had the wife that he was supposed to have according to general dynastic rules. He had the wife he picked himself, and that went terribly, and he had to have her declared a witch to get rid of her. He had the wife that he actually seems to have loved, gave him a son, and then died. And then the wife that, once again, politics told him he had to have. So he went out and he picked his English rose. He didn't really want to get married anyway, but he picked himself what he thought was going to make him happy after all of this.
Okay.
This is not to paint him as a sympathetic character. This is a progression that gets you there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after her mother's death, Catherine Howard was raised in the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk's household. She's a teenager that just got picked by the king. She's gotten taken up out of basically a household for rich orphans. It's byblows and bastards, or just 15th daughters that nobody's going to give a dowry to. She's raised in a household that takes in these kids.
If you have 15 daughters, can't you just assimilate them into your house?
No, you don't have the money to raise them most of the time. I mean, pretty much universally, at least in past eras, a daughter born to your household is not a asset being added to your household. It's something that's going to be given to another household. It's not something that, and I do say something because that's how it is framed. A daughter is something that you're raising to be added to someone else's family, not your own. Yeah, so she gets brought out of the Dowager Duchess's house and sort of placed in front of Henry because, he's been temperful pretty much the entire time, but it's extra bad as he ages and has various failed marriages and, love life.
Open wound
and
that
open
smells.
wounds suppurating for decades.
That makes me want to vomit.
That'll make you pretty angry. Yeah, and they place Catherine Howard in front of him, and he takes her as the thing that's going to make him happy. And for a while, she's digging it. Everything except for the nightly duties. She's got jewels, she's got food, she's got all of her buddies around her, and she's living the high life. But she's also a young woman that's just been stuck in a very old, smelly man's bed. And what actually happened is a matter for academic dispute. I'm going to tell you the version of the story as I understand it.
Okay.
Henry hired a hottie named Thomas Culpepper.
Henry, you big moron.
And he decides to sleep with the queen, or the queen decides to sleep with him. Either way, they definitely have at least an emotional affair because there's notes that are discovered. But there was a Northern Progress trip where it's mostly understood that she and Culpepper slept together. But guess who's the go-between between these two fantastically stupid lovers? Jane Boleyn. Viscountess Rochford. Because, once again, you have a young, untried queen. You need well-tested, well-experienced ladies.
Yeah.
They bring back Lady Rochford. She's beholden to everyone. She's actually had some honors and, more importantly, money restored to her in the interim that had been taken, like her bride's portion, which is basically a piece of your dowry that is always supposed to be legally the bride's. So if for some reason the marriage dissolves, that is the bride's portion is meant to go back to her.
Okay.
Which, died for treason. Nobody's given that back. But eventually she did get it back.
Okay.
She's also been invited back to court after all these various scandals, so she's definitely trusted in a certain way to be a household member. And you can see the variety of ways that she would have gotten talked into that. Like, just at face value, it's like, that is the dumbest. You've survived so many scandals, and you're going to do this? Like,
I know.
Leave that the hell alone. But teenager or not, Catherine Howard is her mistress. She is the person that can have her kicked out of court life and down into obscurity. And at this point, she doesn't have a whole lot of lives left.
Yeah.
So if she gets kicked out, that's it. And so she does what her employer asks her to do.
Yeah.
Or she's just a fan of young love. She's seen all the awful that anybody can get thrown at them over and over and over again in a highly politicized public environment. And maybe these two just wanted a little bit of happiness and she wanted to help. Like, we're never going to know.
Yeah.
What we do know is that everybody got caught.
Aww.
And this time, Jane went down with them. So when Catherine Howard was executed, Jane Rochford was not right there with her, but she was also executed. And I think it's a really sad, ignominious end to somebody that was a scrapper and doesn't get credit for it.
Right. And I mean, what other end would there be? Like you said, when she goes back to court and you're like, that was a stupid idea. What else were you going to do?
Yeah, no, your reputation and your place in society was the only credit that you had to spend to feed yourself.
Right. You didn't get to go be like, you know what, I'll just go to college. I can get a scholarship. All right. Live on campus till I'm done.
It's not even really I'm going to go find a sugar daddy because people do get remarried, but it's not like she has anything to offer the marriage. And people do get remarried for political and monetary reasons, but for love, for support, for anything like that.
Her option would have been to get married
it's
to
so rare.
Take care of some widowers' kids and household.
Right.
And be treated who knows how.
Exactly. You can be a glorified servant that also he gets to diddle in the evenings. Like, that's not necessarily preferable. So I think that the most important point that Julia Fox makes that sticks out to me is why everyone's kind of been fine and comfortable with Jane Rochford being the bad guy. And that is the era directly after Henry VIII, once everything has settled in the mishmash between the kids and, we get Elizabeth I, Gloriana, Golden Age. She's the patron of the historical accounts that are being written of the time previous to her. Well, so if you're writing the account of Henry VIII's 6 wives and daughter with the one that was killed for witchcraft is your employer, your Gloriana, your person that can now kick you to Virginia. Are you going to write the story from the perspective of your father, Henry VIII, was an asshole? Are you going to write the story from the perspective of your mother, Anne Boleyn, was a witch? Or did this bitch Jane Rochford just come in and fuck everybody up? Yeah, that's clearly the story. That's
right. That's so interesting.
That's the one that we're going to go with, because you have to please Gloriana more than you really have to figure out this seeming back character's motivations.
Right. That's just so, I don't know, it just makes me think, like, you know, when you said not to paint Henry as a sympathetic character, because, like, overall, he's really not. But if you, if you analyze every point in his life, there would be plenty of points in which you were like, gosh, that really twists my heart.
I think that's anybody's story. Anybody, villainous or otherwise, has points in their life that make you go, oh, my dear.
Right. And I also always give grace to all of the women who have come before me, because a lot of times it really was, and what else were you going to do? That's so interesting. So at first, when you were like, most people maybe haven't heard of Jane Boleyn, I was like, of course we have. But no, I was thinking of a mashed up Anne Boleyn and Jane
Seymour.
Yeah,
which is totally normal.
Yeah, I was all, oh, wait, nope, I don't know this story.
Well, thank you for letting me get on my soapbox about Reputation and...
Big Reputation. I keep singing little parts of Taylor Swift because now it's in my head, obviously, every time Rose says Reputation. That's all.
Appreciate you guys listening. I hope you're having a fabulous week.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
See you next time.
Bye!